Good morning.
How are you doing?
How are you today? Feeling good?
Yeah, I'm good. We were just chatting about the weather, right?
I mean, I don't want to be that guy, but yesterday I got sunburnt. You know, like, really? What's going on?
Well, I get
But
to wear
yes.
a cool top though, so that's always a bonus.
I must say that is very, very awesome. I didn't know if you were going through one of those crazy phases where, like, people have now started to, like, dress up at home. Like, that's a thing now. People are like, oh, I'm in my pajamas. Now I'm like, do you have no time to do anything other than this? It's very funny.
I go for a walk once a day and I definitely dress up. It's weird.
Yeah, no, I love the memes where people are taking out their garbage and like, oh, what do I wear today? And I'm like, oh, that's so true. So true. So we're just going to give a couple more minutes till 10, but we'll just carry on chatting.
Cool.
Hello, Nicola. Okay, well, it's 10 o'clock. So welcome. And basically, we're going to just jump sort of straight in with the introduction, and I'll leave that up to you, and then we'll have a little structured conversation about your take on art, your inspiration, and your process, really.
My name is Gordon Glyn-Jones. I'm from Zimbabwe, in case you're wondering what the accent is. I studied fine art at UCT, which is in Cape Town. And I landed on campus today, Mandela walked free. So that gives you a context of where and when I studied. Even though it was a big time of change, it was also a big time of opportunity. So when I left art school, I'd been painting by myself for 5 years. If I'm really honest, I didn't really have anything very particularly profound to say to the world. I mean, I think I was 25. Who has? And a friend of mine suggested that we start a magazine. We were indulging in some kind of recreational activity that I won't tell you about, but it sounded like a cool idea at the time.
It doesn't work.
And we did, and we kind of grew this magazine. It was called Cape Review, and it was very much like Time Out, but it was all about what art was coming up, filmmakers, artists, music, all that sort of thing. And we grew it to be quite big. I mean, we were selling 25,000 copies a month in Cape Town, and Caxton, which is the biggest publishing company in South Africa, invested in us. So it was a pretty good thing. But what it meant was that, I mean, at the time I thought I'd go back to art in a couple of years. You know how it goes. And then 10, 15 years later, because I was the editor of the magazine, and I followed a girlfriend to England, as one does, and got a magazine job here. And then eventually, so I started to move back. I work for the SouthAfrican.com, which is a medium for South Africans living in the UK and now globally. And then I was always doing art on the side, but then at some point I decided, well, it was time to get back into it properly, which was about 4 years ago. So I have been doing dedicated art for about 4 years, but I'd say the last 2 years have been really very, very important because, I mean, I'm part of various support groups and so on, and we help each other thrive. And one of the conversations we had was, I suddenly realized that I was talking about being an artist. You know, when you go to bars or whatever, and people say, hey, what do you do? I always had that, am I an artist? Or, you know, can I be, because I do two jobs as many artists do. You may not think so, but many, many do. And then I realized I wasn't doing any art. I was doing some. I was having like a show or two a year, but then, so I just started my Instagram account. So I thought, okay, let me play a game. I'll do a drawing every day for 30 days.
Yeah.
And I'll share it to Instagram and I'll share it to Facebook. Originally it was just an Instagram. And the idea behind it was I was always, because when you study at an art school, there's very much like there's a need for you to have some sort of profound academic take on the whole thing. And often I found that kind of thing a little bit inauthentic. And so once you commit yourself at the beginning of a project, 4 years later, when you've developed it, the world has changed or your beliefs have changed. So sometimes people get trapped in that world. So I wanted to find out what I wanted to make art about more by making art than by overlaying some intellectual sort of framework. And this daily drawing was like a godsend. It was essentially, I gave myself no rules. Anything was workable as long as I shared a piece of work at the end of each day. And just the freedom that came with it, and also because, I mean, there's certain things came up. For example, that because you commit, weirdly, we're obviously looking good is very important to us, but because I committed in the public space, the idea of not doing it would be too embarrassing, or just clearly...
Yeah, that bit of added pressure for yourself to kind of spur you on a bit.
You know, you can't just talk yourself out of it, because even though nobody would have cared, for me, I would have known, and it was...
Yeah.
So therefore, that debate about whether should I do art today or not just was completely out the way. And that was the true lesson, because it just meant that I could just do art and not really care. And then I guess the second thing was letting go of whether the piece, because people get scared when they start a blank piece of paper, like, oh, am I going to do something that's good? And excuse me, am I going to impress people?
I get like that all the time.
You know what I mean? You could just do one, and tomorrow there was another one. So it was like that became less important.
Yeah.
And then, so the first 30 days worked really well. So I decided, well, okay. And then I did 60, and then I did 90, and then I did 180.
Yeah.
And yeah, like an interesting thing started to happen. It was like I was developing a visual language. When I talk about it, I compare it to like a knife maker. You know, I saw a program on these beautiful, these guys who make bespoke knives, and each knife is the story of the person who's having it made for them. But they make knives by making knives every day. You know what I mean? It's like that simple. It's like, so now during that process, when I noticed one day, people said, "What do you do?" And I would just it rolled off my tongue. I'm like, I'm an artist. And it was that distinction. It was like, I'm an artist because I make art every day. So simple, you know?
Yeah.
And then, because I was
so simple.
It was, well, there you go. But years of angsting about how to do that beforehand.
Yeah.
Honestly, you know, wringing my hands and thinking, oh, like, who do I want to be? What do I want to say to the world? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but like you say, the point you brought up before, if you don't have a degree, you can't possibly have anything to say. And if you don't use these particular words, you're just saying the same sentence, just adding in things that make you sound more educated. But I feel like when I was researching for this conversation today, I looked at your art in a real, like just in a raw kind of way. Like, how do I really feel when I look at this, man? Because obviously, I met you in an exhibition, and you know we've been in contact, and I love what you do already. But having to go and post it today on the Instagram story, and really having to think, it made me really uncomfortable in the beginning when I started to really pay attention to what you had drawn, because, like, it's my thing about not being able to draw from my head. Well, I stop myself because I say that, but that kind of frightens me. That complete and utter from your imagination. Like, yes, you can see your life drawing influence and stuff like that with some of the figures. But for me, it was nice to then go and research your page and stuff like that, and then actually see that that is the point of your art. So it was nice for me. I would prefer to look at your art before I hear all the big expensive words. So in that way, it feels more authentic to me, then I can genuinely either appreciate it or become a genuine fan of it. And that uncomfortable feeling for me was quite nice, because I get that in front of art that does something that I can't explain. So it was nice to kind of, the uncomfortable is not a negative connotation. I hope you take it as a compliment, but that was kind of the, and to know that you did the commitment of 180 days was, like you said, so simple. If you just make art every day, it becomes easy to believe that you are the artist you know you are, but it becomes authentic to you. Because it's, I suppose, like other people go to work every day. You can't do art once every 3 months and say that you're, that's quite incredible to me. That pressure, I like that you put that other pressure of people knowing you're doing it, but no one's going to actually be like, oh, you missed out 112. So, yeah, that's quite cool.
You know, there's another way of looking at that. perhaps in a more positive way, in it, when you do anything worth doing, I think, in this world, if you've got a team around you, it always makes it much more enjoyable because you get feedback, and you know it's a conversation that you're in with others rather than. I mean, there's a sort of notorious romantic notion of the artist, a solitary soul, just creating away, like the Van Gogh myth and all that kind of stuff. You know, like whereas in fact most successful artists had a very powerful peer group and also had supporters, and you know what I mean. It's always a lot of fine art's been a conversation rather than just this kind of unique talent. And often, you know, when you've got peers that all push you and that sort of thing, that's when it's really powerful. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, I think what I was trying to do was I was trying to create a visual language that came from the page rather than. So it was very much more authentic in a sense. You know, it was like. But definitely there were certain rules that came from the kind of person I am. So I can quite happily do representational stuff, as you point out. You know what I mean? I did, excuse me, my final year work at university was like I did huge, kind of quite intimate portraits of people. You know, very much representational and that sort of. So yes, I've got that background. But then the task I set myself was just to. I began the drawing from a different place. I don't have any idea of what it looked like at the end. But because you're doing it every single day, what tends to happen is that like a visual language starts to evolve. So there's iconography that repeats itself. And I mean, it obviously does come from somewhere, and that narrative is evolving. But I'll only really tell you about that if you're engaging with me and you know, there's a powerful interest, but I think there's also, I quite like the idea of people being able to read the work. It's slightly open-ended. You can bring your own interpretation to it. So it's a little bit more like reading a book, you know, like.
Right, it's kind of a bit like I desperately want you to make a world out of it. It sounds a bit like I'm very into anime and manga and kind of, not to say there's a heavy influence on yours, but it makes me feel the same way when I engage with that. But I found myself through like even the drawings of like the mushrooms and the foliage and stuff, like I desperately want to see it as a whole, like complete universe. Like it made me feel like we are in like some kind of like a magical forest kind of feeling, because everything is so open to you just feeling how you feel when you look at it. It's not necessarily that, oh, I'm looking at a mushroom. Like it's not even looks like that at the beginning. And the more you spend time, you get a bit lost in your pieces, for me anyway. And I find that that's so nice because you get, nice is such a cuck word, sorry. What's so fantastic about that is you allow that person without necessarily having to know you. They really just stand there. It evokes some feeling, which I think a lot of art does in general, of course. That's the point. But for me, that's what's nice. Is it feels like a complete universe that you get lost in, and you show us sections of this, which I found was quite inspirational.
Like you're paying me the greatest compliment, because ultimately that's kind of what I'm setting out to do. So the fact that it's moved you in the first place is a really great feedback, because I suppose what's the worst thing that could happen? Indifference. That sort of reaction. I mean, if I discuss
I'd rather it would be a love or hate of it, because the middle ground is like doesn't help you to push yourself or give you like any push or pull. It's just like, oh, that's nice. That's why I can't use that word. Like, it's nice.
But I mean, I also think, I don't know whether it's a result of the gallery system or what it is, but many people, I think it's because some of art has been quite a little bit difficult to interpret, and there's a lot of snobbery around it. So people are intimidated to feel what they feel about art.
Absolutely.
And, I think that's a bit of a shame, because ultimately it's just, whatever it is, it's not going to change. I mean, it may change the world, but frankly, one generation or two generations, and it's changed its meaning anyway. You know, art's not that significant, frankly. It doesn't matter who you are. But if it's, look, that doesn't mean it shouldn't be intelligent, or it shouldn't be properly creative or move you. That's why we do it. But I think feel what you feel about the art, and if it moves you and if it makes you feel like there's another universe possible, then that's awesome. You know?
Yeah, I was having this when I spoke to Marvin the other day and his artist conversation. I was saying the thing that frustrates me so much is when people are like, I can't draw. And these are also the people that, why do I want to go to a gallery? Like, I don't understand art. And they build this barrier because they're scared that they say something or how they're feeling, offer their opinion, and other people will reject it. Like, there's people with no hands and paint with their mouths. So and that didn't happen overnight. They didn't become these fantastic realist artists or whatever overnight. They put that paintbrush in their mouth every single day. If you have functioning limbs, you can produce art, but it's become almost like diamonds. Like, as Africans, we understand it's like dirt. They're everywhere. The marketing is fantastic behind them, but they're rubbish. They're everywhere. They're like sand. But I've lost my point going into diamonds. It made me so mad. Sorry. But yeah, the thing is, when people have that fear of those big words or not knowing, you know, what artist to reference in, oh, this is very Kandinsky-like, or they feel separated. And why I love our Hanway pop-up galleries is it's very, it's in a bar. We change it into a pop-up gallery to bring people also who wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable in a gallery, to bring them closer to art. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there's some, you know, I feel like the greatest artists, for example, a really good example is Grayson Perry. He makes highly sophisticated art, but somehow in terms of how he talks to people, I never feel like he's talking down. He's very much a man and a woman of the people. You know? Yeah. I think definitely there's been a big separation from art and the general populace, and I think that's a bit of a shame. I mean, I run workshops where I take people who can't draw at all, and we have a look at essentially that there's a genesis of identity when it comes to creativity, and there's normally a moment when you're 5, probably in a, I don't know, standard 2 class, where somebody, either there's a girl who sits next to you, can do a flower more neatly than you, or a teacher says something daft, because often they do, because children are highly sensitive. And then from that moment onwards, that creates your creative identity. You decide whether you are a creative person for the rest of your life. And it's pretty amazing when you take people back there and you go, okay, what happened? Because I mean, creativity is innate within all of us. If you think about language itself is a highly creative act. So yes, there's some people who develop into perhaps more analytical brains, but I think the more people have the potential to be creative than think they do.
100%. I really feel like there's a lot of times, like you say, where there'll be a small trauma that, like, a teacher will say something and they won't even remember the comment, but you'll hold it in your heart for the rest of your life and never be brave enough to take that step. And like, if I can just ask you, like, while you're working, because you get to work from home, how has it been now that you've actually dedicated, like, I'm really getting back to my artwork? How was that process for you?
So I think one of I guess it comes back down to this idea of what you're making art for and who the audience is. So I ask myself sometimes, what is it that what's the ultimate for me? You know, would it be, okay, forgive me, but just, you know, when you're trying to find out your dreams, you ask yourself the big questions, right? So what would be the ultimate? Would it be to have an exhibition in the Tate? Or would it be to make 5 paintings a year and they sell for 200 grand? And I think that this is, forgive me, it's going to sound a bit pretentious, but I really, genuinely, my goal is to make really good art And I do things like, so I've got a whole curation side as well. So I've just curated a show with some friends of mine who I felt we all had a conversation in terms of what our art is and the level is. And I think there's always a pushing yourself out there, making sure that you broaden your reputation. Definitely selling art gives you some kind of, if somebody's going to put money in their pocket and give you money for that art, there's something really powerful about it. And so it's just, and I think that, okay, so I think that one of the things that I'd love to be a crusader for is this idea of, because I'm about to turn 50 in a month or two, and I see my life in the following way. Like, I see almost like I learned how to be a winemaker in the first 30 years of my life since studying, and now get to really shine and express myself in a way that's sophisticated, that's taken 30 years to get to that point. So I see art as an opportunity to really do something spectacular for myself, and something that I can really, dedicate a lot of time to and improve and make sure it's the best possible thing I can do. So there's always a conversation going on about what to choose, because when you do a piece every day and you've given yourself total freedom, so you do start to realize that you need certain disciplines. So, for example, one of the reasons I choose black and white is because when evolving that visual language I talked about, it's almost like you need to be given strictures to a certain degree. I mean, I love color, but color plus form and so on, when you're evolving, is just too much. So it's like, you'll see, I'm working on body work at the moment, which is, I'm going back to painting, because I'm essentially a painter, and that color is going to come back in.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, so how do I see it down, every mountain there's a whole bunch of little steps. So it's literally everything I do is like, okay, well, there's the big picture. How do what steps do I do every single day in order to get that? And that's describes the whole process. I don't know if I've answered your question.
I'm not really sure, but I think it kind of more discusses that. I was more saying, like, with your working from home, like, but then I think you kind of answered it, because doing a page a day brought that discipline and that structure for you to be able to then continue and really dedicate time to your art. So yes, in a roundabout way, you have answered yes. And then, to be fair, like, as a budding, finding my own way as an artist now, obviously I've had my proud moments of my artistic career so far at 35. Like, I've had my moments of pride. So far, what's been your kind of proudest moment connected directly to your art?
They're not specific moments, but I started to notice them happen. So the one was when I'd been sharing for long enough. You know, when you when you say I'm going to be an artist, and your friends all kind of go, "Oh, that's nice." And you did art at university, and they know you sort of always talked about it, and they're like, "Yeah, well," and they told you because they love you and so on. But I think when people started to really respond with, they'd say things like, "Oh my God, you're really doing this, aren't you?" You know what I mean? And then you start to get feedback from strangers, and you elevate beyond that. I think that was the first moment that I thought was great. And then the second is also when, for example, I work with an artist called Peter Mamas, who's a South African chap.
Yes, I think he's going to try to do a small exhibition with us when Outside is open again.
Yeah, I mean, basically, I saw because I did a show as part of Art Africa magazine. They had a big there was a sort of an open call section, and I had a couple of pieces of work there. But Peter had a piece at the entrance, which was this massive piece. And I remember standing in front of that and thinking, wow, this artist's awesome. I really think he's amazing. And then next thing I know, he's in the UK and we're doing a show together. And I think it's that's the second thing. It's like peer acceptance amongst peers who you respect. That's, really powerful one.
Oh, that's really cool.
So what the next one is, I don't know. I guess it'll...
So I think you're right in the middle of your art career. Here's the next 50 years. Good luck.
Let me throw it back to you. What do you reckon would be, or has been, or will be your next milestone?
I think, to be fair, we had our 1-year anniversary of exhibitions for the Hanway Collective on the 4th of April. And it was kind of really easy to just be like, oh, we need to do more, and to know that I can stop and celebrate that, and the team that's around that, and the way that they support, and the people that I've met through dedicating all my time to exposing more artists. Because to be fair, that's my drive, is to give artists a space to be able to utilize in a city that is extortionate, and that we're not able to just, or you don't have that degree, so a gallery's not going to look at you, I'm just trying to find a way to expose as much as possible. So for me, the proud moment was having a year anniversary and being stronger than when we began, and knowing more and knowing that we're doing more has been sort of because it's an ongoing thing, it's been my proudest moment that we've kept going. And
I guess really on behalf of the art world, I just want to say thanks. I mean, you're like a force of nature, and you don't have to be like you are. I think that's amazing that you're working for others. I think.
No, but I think also, to be fair, I love to fight for and get people what they deserve. And for me, I think the art world can be incredibly cruel to the actual artist, because at the end of the day, they have invented all these rules, but they themselves are not artists. So it becomes very pretentious and inauthentic. And for me, all the artists I know that live and breathe and are obsessed with their art, they just need some space and some time. And if there's a way that I can facilitate it and develop better with the council, maybe organize some studio space, that for me is where I can give back. And in that way, I'm surrounding myself with an army of artists that I'm healthily jealous of, where I'm looking at what you guys are doing and thinking, well, if he can do it, why can't I do it? Because all it is, wow, you're a great success. And I want it to be a compliment instead of an insult, where I'm like, I really want that to drive me. So almost like you setting it out in the public arena, if I surround myself by epic artists, I have no sort of excuse for myself. I can't lie then and be like, well, it was just retailers you hung out with, or people who didn't do art. So, but now I have no way to escape that pressure for myself.
Well, look, I mean, I think that, I guess it's easy for me to say, having gone to university, but I think that barrier 9 times out of 10 is more in the artist's mind than, I think, honestly, my experience of galleries and of the art world in general is, if your art is really incredible,
Shan?
Whether you went to university or not is irrelevant. I think it's about, but I mean, I had the same conversation with myself, trust me. I'm like, oh, galleries are not going to accept me, hire galleries, unless I do my master's. So should I be like signing up to Goldsmiths? You know what I mean? And I guess in a way, the answer to that is, I don't have time. I'm too busy making art. And I guess if you set yourself high standards and I mean, what is university really? Okay, it's time to read lots of history of art and listen to some lectures, which you can do essentially. If you're not reading and looking at a lot of artists as an artist, I think you're probably missing out. And
100%.
You need to be consuming art all the time. So that's the one side of studying. The other side of studying is just essentially all the universities are there for, in my opinion, is to teach you how to teach yourself.
It's recording. I fixed it.
If you can do that without that piece of paper, then I mean, I'm having the same debate at the moment. I'm trying to maybe put together a self-masters, if you like, so understand what a curriculum would be like, because my solo show is a specific theme. So
that's true.
That's kind of where I'm going with it, you know. So everybody should do that.
No, but I absolutely agree. Like, even because I've had that apprehension of I'm not an artist because I didn't study and blah blah blah, and I've put those roadblocks. I understand completely. Like, once, and that's why when I come across these artists that are just obsessed, that I can't put in the artist. I can't train you to be obsessed about what you're doing. But when I see you're obsessed, if I can provide a space for you to be more exposed, no problem. I can't guarantee that people will come in and do all these amazing things, but I can give you the space and we can promote it as much as we can. And together we can build slowly something that, like you say, we have a network now. If somebody's really wanting to study or get into galleries, you know, maybe I can refer them to you and they can have a chat with you, or they want to learn more about photography, I can talk to Marvin. It's nice that we build a little network and a small community, because it's such a lonely discipline. It's your heart and your soul on that page. It's what people are going to judge you, not me standing next to you, you know, upselling and commission and based and all this nonsense. It has to be completely from you.
I think it's also, you know, it's also part of how the world is changing. I mean, for example, if you look at the Turner Prize this year, that was shared amongst the 4 winners this year, or was it last year? But I mean, the idea that collaboration is very much of the now, if you like. It's like the cult of the unique artistic egos. It doesn't really fit where society is right now. So being in a collective and being part of a team is really powerful, I think.
And the thing for me is, like, when I did my first exhibition, I was terrified. I lay on the floor in a fetal position. Like, Shannon walked over me and she's like, "Oh, are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm really excited about this art." And she's like, "Looks like you're real." And like panic attacks and freakouts, because I also wanted to put on my own show so I would know how other artists felt when they were walking into their show. And I'm standing there going, "Oh, we need to do this, and we need to do this, blah, 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 blah." But yeah, it's incredible that you're so lonely and no one gets it if they're not an artist. They don't understand, like, I can phone you a day or two before, like, "Hi, have you thrown it all in the bin yet? Do you hate it all? Can we start again?" So that was nice for me to put myself in that position so that when I'm around artists, you know, because I still want to develop my art and stuff like that. So, but I also like to understand how people are going to feel when they're in it, because the anxiety and stuff like that from being alone is sometimes can drive your art and push you a little bit, but also there's nothing wrong with having a phone call and be like, "Hey dude, I'm struggling a bit today. How's your day?" So yeah, for me, the collective and being able to open it up to guest artists like yourself, it's really, really nice to build that network and let you guys know whatever you need for your show, Hanway have you. You know, we'll bring whatever we can. We'll bring bodies if that's what we need. So yeah, I'm really excited for the development of this team. It's going to be.
Well, I appreciate it as well, you know, because I mean, ultimately, if you're developing your own thing, if you're doing it in isolation, like for example, I share stuff to Instagram or I share it to Facebook, but I'll put the tiniest little comments. So to have a conversation like this really helps me too, because if I've got to verbalize what I'm doing, then it clarifies it for me. So the next time, if I'm presenting to a gallery or if I'm writing a press release or something, you've helped me kind of understand where I'm at too. So it's really, but I mean, I also think, I don't know what my next show is going to be. I do want to do a solo show, but I don't know. I think probably a group show. I mean, this whole thing has changed everything. So probably.
Yeah, how have you found, like, obviously, because you work from home already,
Mm-hmm.
how has this like horrific time like impacted you? Do you feel an impact besides going outside and humans?
Well, I guess it wasn't that different initially. And because all work stopped, I started to do more artwork, which is, dare I say, it's kind of nice. You know, I feel like it's sabbatical or something, you know, it's like I've
the whole world's been getting sabbatical. You just can't hang out together.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's on a human level, it's been amazing. Like, just reconnecting with people and remembering to connect with people. And I think that's, if anything comes out of this, I mean, I like to think of myself as an analog person. So when I do my drawing workshops, initially I was like, oh, I love being in the same room as people, and like the life drawing that you put on, and, you know, drawing it's like, it makes it all less lonely and so on. But you can do some stuff online, and it has greater scope than we think, you know. So yeah, and I'm started working with my sister to do a set of online courses that we're already starting on this week, and that.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
Well, I was so resistant. I mean, it took us a week of conversations to go, and ultimately, I guess in a way that's because I kind of teach creativity through drawing, and that's creativity in essence is having the faith to start a project without knowing what the final result looks like. And not just the faith, but the calm, you know, just do it. And see, you will make mistakes. You need to make lots of mistakes. And it's like really hard I think you said that you're a perfectionist in the last interview. And I think that's just an expression of wanting to do something really, really well. And that's good, you know, but it's like, I was cleaning up, because that's what you do as well when you're isolated. I cleaned up my whole studio, and I went through and there was a whole bunch of drawings from the original 30, and I threw some away. Shock horror. And it was like, okay, at the time, if I'd known that I had to do 100 rubbish ones to get to one that I started to think was okay, it's like, I don't know if I would. But at the time, what I thought was doing was great. But now I'm happy to. It was a big shift to be able to say, you know what, I'm never going to exhibit this. Yes, there's a little thumbnail of it on Instagram. That's probably enough. And now I'm going to throw it away. And it was like, really good process. You must try it. Because
I've been doing it not necessarily like my art stuff. Our studio's super organized because my sister is super organized.
Right.
So but I've been going through those little things, like stupid, like sort your jewelry out. You know, like get your things in one space, like silly little things, and that's helped so much. I spent the first month of my kind of sabbatical from work doing that, because I just couldn't draw. I couldn't come in the studio and be creative, because I know there's things in like just stupid, fold your laundry, clear your space, get it all in a space where you can wake up in the morning, do your stuff, get on with your day. So that's been nice to have that time to calm the rest of the chaos. And now I'm like, okay, cool. I want to do that art competition, and I want to see if I can. Because loads of people are doing that, like draw this and send it in. A few of the fashion designers that I like, so I'm feeling more positive to even attempt that.
Right.
Which is really nice.
So I think you've nailed it. Basically, I think you need the time and the space. You need the two elements to it. You need to be able to have enough freedom to play, because that's where the creativity comes from. And then once you're playing, you need the time and the space to be able to concentrate in your own way. And if you're disturbed by others, or you're too worried about, and there's clutter, or you know what I mean, it's just like definitely that kind of cool balance between, right, this is a space I can create in, and there's nothing, there's no pressure to do anything, but then once you're in it, you really focus. So yeah.
That's very cool. And then if we can get a little bit like fantastic and dreamlike, like what would be your absolute like dream commission or space to exist, like, or the dream of how, like, is it a book, is it like you say, the Tate, like what is your, like, no money or no red tape involved, like what's the dream?
I think the first
dream
dream,
to live with.
well, I think the first dream would be to, because I still do another job, and I think that the first dream would be to be able to let go of that, firstly. And I think sometimes people, a lot of artists I know aren't very forthright about doing two jobs, and I think it's important to celebrate that. You know, it's like...
Yeah. It takes incredible discipline to do that.
Well, you can't do anything if you those things can become such a trap, and if you can get out of that trap, then you can pat yourself on the back for sure. So I guess that would be the first milestone, and I will get there definitely. The ultimate, I want to be creating work at the age of 95 that people love, and then I want to drop dead. Doing what I love.
Oh, that's fantastic. What a great dream. That is such a good honor. I really didn't expect that.
Honestly, I just want to be able to make awesome art for a very long time. And it's such an exciting way of living, you know.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. Yeah, and then also, obviously, we've talked about, like, the proud moments and the dream. But what for you so far on your journey has been your sort of scariest or most apprehensive moment when it comes to your artwork?
You know, it's not... I think in a way it's not a moment. I think it's about... I've been in situations...
A time period, or even the scariest thought you've had, like whatever, it doesn't, maybe the structure of the sentence is limiting you.
I've been amongst peers that I respect and felt out of my depth and felt small. And I think that those are the moments I find most challenging, because then my childhood insecurity, daddy issue crises kick in, you know? It's like...
Yeah, but we so often do that to ourselves, where we put ourselves in that, like, I felt about like a teenager for years in my workplace until I finally was like, actually, I'm an adult and this is not acceptable anymore. You people need to behave like adults. Sorry.
And I think it's just about you need to do your own stuff to build your confidence. And then I think if you're in the company of people who've done it and you haven't done it, that's the feeling you're feeling. And I think that's what you've got to learn, is to not to worry too much about that. But what I made that mean was that I'll never make it. I'll never be good enough. But that's, the more you do, the less that, I mean, it always comes in. But I guess, so that's the scary part, is just dealing with that fear, that internal fear. It's something that I create, and if I can dissolve that and just work, you know, that like imposter syndrome scenario, I think that's the scariest thing.
100%. Like, sometimes and it sounds a bit strange, but I'm afraid of the success that I can reach. Like, I know that it's there, but I'm also afraid of that. Like, once it's there, will I be able to maintain it? Am I good enough for it? And it's like, you know, the internal monologue that you talk about is obviously always there spurring us on, but it's about, like you say, that change, to not use those negative words, maybe use something that means the same thing but it's a little less, and also forgiving yourself and allowing yourself that freedom, you know, to make the 100 rubbish drawings to then produce those 3 or 4. But like, I've noticed it's just always the more time that you're spending and consuming and dedicating, the better your production always becomes.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's no getting around that. And it's like, I think that's why the 100 I can't tell you how grateful I am that I stumbled across that one little process. You know, it's like, it could easily have gone any other way. I could easily have continued the way I was doing. And I mean, I used to have to tie myself in knots before I could start to create, and felt that was the way forward and that was the way to do it. And
you have to suffer. Like, you can't just be creative in a happy space. I find a lot of people feel, unless I'm like really angry or really sad, I don't really feel creative, and that's super toxic. That really is. We have to untrain ourselves from that.
Because it's like, for me, it's like, I guess in the drawing workshops, one of the things that we do is we start with music. And if you think about dancing, for example, dancing is almost like the most democratic art form there is. It's like music, you hear the beat, your body moves to the beat. It's like, there's never that interim period, like, there the beat was, I wonder if I should move my arm, or I should move my hips, or whatever the hell it is.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like trying to get into that place when, as an artist, and like, because when you dance, does it matter whether you dance well or not? No, not really. Put a big tune on, just dance, you know. And so accessing that creative headspace is I mean, I always make music, always make art with music. I can't do otherwise. And it's a lot of, you know, you talking about the terror of the blank page. Often I'll just kind of, my work is just kind of doodling, really.
Yeah.
You know, it's like sling the headphones on, put some lively music on, and start doing, and then that's what happens.
Yeah, I think what's helped massively is putting on the live drawing sessions, because also you're standing there timing the model, and you can draw, so you kind of sit down and you sketch a bit, and then it's like, well, actually, I'll rework these at home. And the more time and effort I'm putting into it, the more I'm finding that it's not as scary, that blank page, because like I want it to just be beautiful and perfect and never waste a page. And everyone's like, throw all your pages in the bin. Draw everything and throw them in the bin that day. So you start to get that like disposable kind of graffiti idea of like, once the picture's done, who cares? But it's like that blank page stuff, it actually was quite disgusting, to be fair. It really was.
It takes a while to embrace the idea that you have what you need in your head, because ultimately you kind of go, it's a little bit like learning muscle memory. It's hard to really grasp, you know. So I look at the quality of line I did 300 pieces ago versus now, and that's very different. And it's kind of hard to get your head around why that is. You know, it's like I suppose any sport, if you're a cricketer or whatever, you know, you've done that motion over and over and over again, and you got better at it.
Yeah, of course. And like I was saying to a friend of mine, he came to a live drawing class, and I looked at his page and I said, you need to stop drawing what you think her body's supposed to look like, and look at her. And he said, like, he phoned me back a few days later and he was like, you know, you were right. I was just so, oh my God, I can't do this. So let me draw what I think it could kind of be like. And that's not at all the point. You know what I mean? It's to, like you say, the dancing concept, that's quite interesting, like how your body just instinctually moves. To be able to create that when you get pen to paper would be awesome, actually, quite epic.
Well, there's something, so there are various accesses to that kind of, so for example, if you one of the exercises we do is to close your eyes, or we darken the room, and you got these big drawing boards. You can see them behind me, actually. I don't know if you can.
Yeah, I've seen on your website where they have the really awesome, very free.
So basically, what you do is you switch off the lights and you start to listen to what the sound the pencil makes on the page, like almost like if you can imagine an ice skater, the kind of sound that the skate makes on the ice. It's like the pressure that you're putting, and it just gives your brain access to like a different way of thinking about that, rather than, because the tyranny of what I see, I need to translate that on the page. that's so loaded, it's like, I've got to do something with all my peers in the class. What if I do something that doesn't look good, and then I can be embarrassed and I'm rubbish and all that stuff. I think that's why I love
not to have this time to actually look at mindfulness. Like Marvin, the other artist, photographer that was on the other day, he has a mindfulness coach. And I actually want to talk to him about doing one of these conversations for artists that are maybe struggling with not being able to be outside and in their community as much as they'd like to be the way that they used to. So that's really interesting to me at the moment, is to be able to quiet that inner monologue that batters you, because you're all you have to get to 95 and drop dead after artwork, but you're all you have. And that negative inner monologue, I find a lot of artists do use their trauma to get through stuff, but that inner monologue is so detrimental to them just being a little bit celebratory of their talent. Not arrogant and I'm the best, but there has to be an element of you telling yourself positive things to get to being the best. You can't think, oh, I'm shit, I'm rubbish all the time, because that's what you're going to train your brain to start thinking and doing. So it's quite an interesting way that mental health art connects. I want to look into that quite a bit more. But yeah, we have about 6 minutes.
Hold on.
Oh, no worries. Hi, Peter. Hi, Vasco. Oh, no, we've only got 25 seconds remaining. Oh, I must have started this live quite early. Right. Sorry, guys.
My battery.
But if it cuts off, we're going to go back because we've got 14 seconds left. So I'm coming back to you because we have to wrap this up in a proper way.
Okay.
We'll come back, guys. We're going to end this and I'm going to start a new live. See you in a second.
All right, cool.
Hi.
Hello.
Sorry, I thought we had like 6 minutes left and I was going to let you leave all nice and casually. And I was like, okay, this live started a lot earlier than I thought.
Well, my battery started to, was about to die. So that was tech breakdown.
Technical support. But yeah, sorry, what were you, we were talking about mental health in the art world and just your final thoughts, really.
Well, I guess I was saying that's why I love the fact that I don't have to create something recognizable, because it's always like, it's like every single piece I do is an adventure for me. So it keeps it fresh and interesting. But equally, I guess I'm driving towards, I suppose the thing that's going on right now is the solo show has a specific theme. And it's like all of the drawing up until now, and that's, I don't want to sound pretentious, but this gave me the visual language that I can now express something. So I'll have shows that have a specific meaning, but the language itself is separate. So it's kind of like a formal, and it's all established on the page and it's recognizable. And I think that was my initial goal, was just to be able to make art that people could recognize as mine and I can recognize as mine, because that's something that I've always admired. Pretty much bar none.
Sorry, carry on. Sorry.
That's what I've admired in artists. Those are the artists that really, you can see they do 4 or 5 lines and you know it's them. That's the holy grail for me, pretty much.
So when I was going through your things, I forgot to mention this, but you have a quote from, I think it's your 2015 Human Nature, where it says, to a degree, my work has always been about the gap between the so-called natural world and the world perceived as having humanity at its godhead, Mm-hmm. So that for me was quite an interesting sentence, and I just wanted to understand it more from your perspective. I understand how I've perceived the sentence, but for me, I thought it really explained your artwork kind of really well to me. But I'd like for you to discuss it a bit, if you don't mind.
Sure. Look, I think it is at the core of it. I think that there's a lot of separation between humanity and nature. It comes from monotheism, and it's all about humanity, somehow this aberration that's outside of nature and is destroying nature, and that's the bad tension, and that's what's bad in the world, right? Whereas my take on it is we are an absolute expression of nature, down to the last plastic bottle in the ocean. You know, there is no separation.
Yeah.
Nature is being nature through us, and nature is also being nature through the digital world and AI and every transformation we go through. So this doesn't change our responsibility to look after the rest of nature. We just happen to be nature's most powerful, and nature being self-aware is the next step in the evolution. So yes, of course, if we have the power to keep the world in balance, then great. But I think it's just like removing that arrogance of, you know, well, we're actually better than nature, and therefore we're the ones who are responsible for breaking nature. I just don't think it's not a healthy way of, I don't believe you never really got anywhere in this world by pointing a finger at somebody and telling them that they're wrong. It only ever empowers the person momentarily who's pointing the finger, but generally it doesn't work. And I think if you want the world to work, if you want nature to be in balance with us, then yes, we have a responsibility, we have the power to do so. But just if we see ourselves as just another fold of nature, then that's, I don't know, it's just more comfortable for me.
Amazing. Wow. Okay. Because for me, it was very hard to put into words, but I really could understand it through how you drew. And then having you put it into those words was much more illuminating. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, if you think about it, so I was thinking about it the other day. You know, 3D printers are becoming really sophisticated and amazing. But if you just think of yourself as an artist, as a 3D printer of nature, so I just see myself pushing the stuff around the page as just another expression of nature being nature. And that's how I connect with the whole thing. And that just is really humbling, and it just means I'm not above nature or below, or I'm just like pretty much the same as a bird flying around in the tree. You know, art is just another expression of nature being nature. I don't know, does that make sense?
Yes, it really does. Very cool. So obviously now we're kind of at the end. I don't have, if anyone wants to ask a couple questions in the comments for Gordon, now's your time. Start doing it. But yeah, no, thank you. This has been a fantastic chat, and like no smoke up your bum, but I'm a genuine, like in doing the research for this, which also has kind of made me a little bit more militant in my pursuit of artists, because obviously I know you, I like you, I want to do stuff with you in the future regarding art, but to really sit down and feel like, how does this man's art actually affect me? Can I ask him these questions authentically, or am I going to have to be like, wow, your stuff is so exciting, which I don't want to do. But it's made it a really nice process for me to have this chat with you and to get to know more of the business side of your art, your website, what you've been through. So that was really cool. And seeing as though none of you... Oh, sorry. No, carry on.
Sorry, it's a real great privilege this side, honestly. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. So anyway, guys, no one's asked any questions, but obviously I'll put a post up. Everything on the Instagram story today is different pieces of Gordon's artwork straight from his Instagram, so you should be able to find him there. And then there's other links to everything else. And then we'll post this video up on the website when we've edited it. And have a wonderful day, everyone.
Lots of love to everybody, and keep healthy and happy. Making art.
Woohoo! Production. But yeah, cool. Anyway, have a wonderful rest of your day. And yes, we'll chat a little bit after this.
Thanks so much.